Ancient Rome. Where you'd live if you got in on the ground floor of the Roman Empire. What you do in the Roman Empire depended on whether you were a peregrine, a person who was born free, a slave, or a freedman, a freed slave. If you were a slave, you were either performing menial labor or fighting as a soldier, while freedmen were performing civil services, and peregrines could do whatever they pleased. Who you'd hang out with, your social structure completely dictated who your friends were. Peregrines hung out with peregrines. Freedmen wanted to hang out with peregrines, but were stuck hanging out with other freedmen, and slaves obviously hung out with slaves. The highlight of your day, once again, this depended on your standing within society. The best part of your day could be going to sleep, but it could also be spent in a vomitorium yucking it up with other peregrines. The Edwardian Era. Where you'd live, the United Kingdom just prior to World War I. What you'd do? Most Brits spent the Edwardian era attending garden parties, lounging in parks, and playing football with their mates. There's a good chance you'd spend an evening reading P. Wodehouse or Rudyard Kipling after an afternoon of croquet. Who you'd hang out with, other members of your class. After the Victorian era, the classes splintered heavily and most of the lower class became servants, pushing them to the fringes of society and rendering them seen, but not heard. It's entirely possible that you could have gone the entire Edwardian era without speaking to someone outside of your class. The highlight of your day, seeing a new George Bernard Shaw play, or even visiting the 1908 Summer Olympic Games that were held in London. The Victorian Era. Where you'd live, if you were lucky, you'd find yourself in the East End of London, somewhere near Columbia Road. But due to the overpopulation caused by the low mortality rate of the era, you might be stuck south of Bethnal Green Road. What you'd do if you were a child during the Victorian era. You were definitely a chimney sweep, or you worked in a factory, so bummer. This was also the era when cricket and tennis were invented, so you'd at least be able to get some exercise after your day spent covered in soot. Who you'd hang out with? You'd probably hang out with other middle-class folks at the circus. People loved the circus in the good old V, or at a paranormal event featuring a hypnotist or a medium. The highlight of your day, curling up with a new story by Charles Dickens or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, as you warm your feet on a glass bottle of hot water. New York in the 1970s. Where you'd live, New York in the 70s looked like a bombed-out wasteland, but rent was cheap, so you could probably live in Manhattan and not break the bank by today's standards. But a lot of families were moving to Queens and the Bronx. What you'd do? The art world exploded in the 70s, so there's a good chance that you'd be painting cryptic graffiti on the subway or starting the next Ramones. Who you'd hang out with? Remember, in the 70s, the scenes were still small and everyone hung out, so it wouldn't be weird to spend an evening drinking with Joey Ramone, Fab Five Freddy, and Debbie Harry. The highlight of your day, by all accounts, New York in the 70s was terrifying, so the highlight of your day would probably be getting home in one piece. The Age of Enlightenment. Where you'd live, Western Europe, and the 13 American colonies. What you'd do? Attend debates about freedom of thought, rational inquiry, critical thinking, and religious tolerance, as well as attend public concerts and read every book you could get your hands on. Who you'd hang out with in the Age of Enlightenment. aristocrats and academics rubbed elbows with the common man. If you wanted to grow your sphere of knowledge, you were expected to reach out to someone beyond your immediate peer group. The highlight of your day, attending a salon and being invited to take part in a Masonic ceremony.
Seattle in the 1990s.
Where you'd live, you'd definitely live in the Capitol Hill district. That's where all the cool kids were. What you'd do, work in a coffee shop, play bass in a local band, or even go to art school. Unless you were a square, then you'd probably work at Boeing. Who you'd hang out with, dudes in your band, other baristas, guys who wore long-sleeve shirts under short-sleeve tees. The highlight of your day, visiting Jimi Hendrix's grave or checking out a show at RCKCNDY.
Ancient Greece.
Where you'd live, you'd probably be near Cyprus, but you might live as far north as Naples or even Istanbul. What you'd do, your day-to-day would either be spent with the 3 F's, farming, philosophizing, or fighting, specifically with another culture that you were trying to stand out. Most commonly, people in ancient Greece were just trying to get by, but there were still plenty of artsy-fartsy types running around trying to figure why the sky is blue. Who you'd hang out with when you weren't going to war or inventing modern agriculture, you'd hang out with other commoners at the theater. The highlight of your day, getting an update on the new Euripides play.
America in the 1960s.
Where you'd live, you'd probably spend your time in the hate tuning in, turning on and dropping out. Or if you got drafted, you'd be stuck in a jungle somewhere in Vietnam. Or maybe living in the South. What you'd do, you'd just groove, man. Who you'd hang with, you'd be following the Dead on tour, or hanging out with the Beats while they wrote their best stuff. Or living at Spawn Ranch with the Manson family. The highlight of your day, picking up a groovy new pair of bell-bottoms.
The Renaissance.
Where you'd live, most of Europe benefited from the Renaissance period, but Italy was the epicenter for the change from the Middle Ages, so it's presumably the place to be. What you'd do, more than anything, you would become self-aware and realize that you were living in one of the most interesting time periods in the world to date. There's a good chance you would write music, make a painting, or create a sculpture for someone in the bourgeois class. Who you'd hang out with, depending on where you lived. You could hang out with William Shakespeare, Gutenberg, or even Machiavelli. Just watch your back with that last guy. The highlight of your day, combining intellectual and physical excellence to transcend the mortal flesh. Sounds like fun.
America in the 1950s.
Where you'd live, the suburbs. What you'd do after the atrocities of World War II, Americans wanted everything to go back to normal. There was a population boom, and large families were moving away from big cities like New York to settle down in smaller communities. You'd either be working at a high-paying job in the city before returning home for a hot dinner, or, if you were coming of age in the 50s, you'd spend your days reading EC comics and putting baseball cards in your spokes. Who you'd hang out with, guys from work, gals from around the neighborhood, or the kids who lived on your street. The highlight of your day, if you were a father trying to balance your job and the family at home, the highlight of your day was more than likely that first drink after you got out of the office.
The Roaring Twenties.
where you'd live if you wanted to be anyone who was anyone. You'd live in New York, Chicago, Paris, or Berlin. What you do, celebrate being alive. Post-World War I, people flocked to the big city to drink, dance, and take part in full-blown debauchery until the break of dawn. You might even write the next great American novel. Who you'd hang out with. If you went to Paris, you'd be hanging out with expats like Hemingway and the Fitzgeralds. If you went north to London, you'd be seen out on the town with the bright young things, a collective of socialites whose only rule in their manifesto was that they had to party. The highlight of your day, going out for one drink or maybe 16.
LA in the 1980s.
Where you'd live, like totally the Valley. Or Orange County if your parents were bogus. What you'd do, you'd either be at the mall, the Galleria, or a Black Flag showing some seedy dive in Hollywood. Who you'd hang out with. Everyone knows that in the 80s you had a very clear-cut line of who to hang out with. The brains, the athletes, the basket cases, the princesses, or the criminals. The highlight of your day, getting away from your parents.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.